We're focusing this half hour on not headlines, nothing in the news, other than post-pandemic recovery, in that relationships have taken on new meaning for a lot of people who have not been able to physically be around their friends, but also in how we are changing our lives, or how our lives have maybe changed for us over the last year. This pandemic has taught us all a lot of different life lessons. So with that said, Joan Murray is a former missionary, maybe former, maybe current, but also an international Bible teacher who has written a book that is titled "You Can Trust Him, Anchoring Your Hope in God During Difficult Times." Joan, I am so thrilled to be able to have this conversation with you, because this piece of life is my priority. Number one, God comes first with me. And so when we are talking about this pandemic and trust and anchoring in our faith, what have you found?
I have found that it is often easy for us to say we trust God until we face difficult times. And so in those difficult times, when we're struggling, we wonder where God is. And we say we trust Him, but sometimes we will go to someone else and talk to them about our concerns before we actually go to Him. And so we all say we trust Him until we face those difficulties.
When I go to Him, I confess almost every time, Lord, I do not trust in you as I should, because we often wonder, does He hear us when our prayers aren't answered the way we would like? Therefore, we go to our mothers, our best friends, our spouses, and we say, well, what would you do, before we even listen to God's answer?
When I started writing the book, a chapter and a half in, I got a frozen shoulder. And so it took 2 months for me to be able to drive. And then after that, when I picked up the book again and began to write it, my arm was so messed up. It took another 8 months to really begin to focus in on the book. And so through all of that journey, I am asking the Lord, where are you? What is going on? I really, I'm writing a book on You Can Trust Him, and I'm having to live out this journey of trusting Him. So I picked up the book at the end of 2018, and I began to write it again. I finished the book in 2019. It is in the editing phase. And all of a sudden, I went to the doctor for my regular checkup, and they said, we need to go into emergency surgery. And I was like, what? And they said, we are concerned. We saw something that could be cancerous. And so I am on this journey writing this book of trust in God. And I've lived through the arm. Then I got shingles in the middle of dealing with the arm. And now here is the doctor saying we have to have emergency surgery, in and out of doctors' offices. And so here we went for the surgery. 3 days before the surgery, my mother passed. And so all of these things are happening as I'm writing this book on trusting God.
Joan, I don't mean to cut you off, but it's during these times that skeptics would say, where is your God? And this is futile for you to be writing something, all these negative. We have a very real enemy, just like we have a very real God. And so all these things would be compounded, and skeptics would say, there isn't a God, and this would be your proof. But that is not the case.
Yeah, it is truly my proof that's not the case. And because in the middle of the struggles, if you don't have Him, if you don't have a relationship with Him, there is nothing to anchor you in the storms of life.
I fall into this category. I have a very long-standing relationship with my God. I have a very deep faith, but like all humans, we don't cultivate when we should. When life is going well, we don't get on our knees. We're not desperate.
Yeah.
And so it's through those difficult times that God uses to, be able to bring us back in relationship with Him. But for those who say, you know what, I just don't know if if I want to continue to believe? People
Yes.
struggle with that.
Here is what I tell myself and I tell people all the time. We have markers in our lives, times when God brought us through. We wondered how we were going to make it from point A to point B. And then we found ourselves in a season where I don't know how I made it, but here I am. And those are those seasons when we're going through the difficulties where God really, he walks with us, he talks with us, he carries us through those seasons. And so I am always mindful of the fact that when I hit a difficult season, I remember when he did it before, when he brought me out before, and that I know that because he's done it before, he can do it again.
When I talk to my teenage boys who I have raised in various churches, we visit a lot of different churches, whether they are Catholic, non-denominational, Methodist, Baptist, we've gone to a lot. And so they ask me a lot of questions. Their questions happen to be the same questions that adults have who have a hard time saying that there is even a God. Our country has become either more agnostic or atheist in the last 100 years than where our country has ever been. We're facing struggles, whether it's the pandemic, politics, environment in this country, and so it's very easy not to believe that there is a God. There is not an easy answer to this, but if you were to break it down to a child, some simple way of explaining that there is a God, in your opinion, what would that sound like?
Well, what it would sound like is that, each day we wake up and we don't really know how we wake up. Some people will say, I turned on the alarm clock and he woke me up today. But when you think about it, there are people around the world who the alarm clock went off in the morning and they did not get up. So there is someone who is sustaining us while we sleep. And then he decides each day to give us another day. So that's one of the ways I would explain it. Another way that I would explain it is that you look around you, whether you're on this continent or overseas, like we travel quite a bit, and you see evidence of God everywhere that you look. The mountains, the sea, the waters, you see evidence of him everywhere you look. And you have to say, this did not happen by happenstance. Someone did this. And then you just look at your hands and how all the parts of our bodies work together so seamlessly. And that's when you know that there is a God. And so we look at these situations around us. We look at and people will say, well, if there is a God, why are we facing the difficulties and the hardships that we're facing? Because sin is in the world. And sometimes because of our choices, we're experiencing the things that we're facing. But God is all around us. He is visible in everything that you see. And so for a child, it's very simple to say, look at the birds, look at the tree, look at the plants, look at everything around you. Someone created these things.
Life is a relay. It is not a sprint. And that is the same with our faith. It is something that you have to really, I don't even want to say work at, but it is something you have to cultivate and to nurture.
Yes.
And that is so important. Joan, I really appreciate this. I do wish we had more time, but I look forward to speaking with you again. My sister, I will pray for you. Please pray for me.